All right, let's bring up Alyssa Thordarson, Glenn Stanton, and Dom Krawczyk. Come on up. There, or there. We're also at the Music Box. We're very aware it's warm in here. We were supposed to have a new air conditioner put in this week, and Chicago being Chicago, the permits got all messed up, so we will have that taken care of Monday, hopefully. Wow, thank you so much for being here. So I'll start with Alyssa and Glenn with After a Love Story. What was the genesis for this project? How did this get started?
Oh, COVID.
COVID.
When you're sitting alone with your thoughts in your apartment by yourself and you're listening to a lot of like true crime podcasts, and you realize that things that, when bad things happen to people, it sort of severs a lot of relationships in their lives, because you have people that want to be there for you, but every time you tell that story to somebody that you love, it hurts them because they love you. And now you're just sort of each other's walking wound. And that was really interesting to me. So I sat down and I wrote the script in one sitting. And it's actually the first screenplay I've ever written, so I sent it to my good friend Claire Cooney, who cannot be with us today, but who is beloved of Chicago. And said, "Does this suck?" And she was like, "No, actually, I think there's some potential here. This is really interesting." And it sort of snowballed into like, "Well, do you want to make this? Like, would you direct this?" And before we realized, we had kicked the can down the hill further than we could retrieve it. And Glenn, I had known sort of a little bit from his time as a theater actor here, but we got to be sort of internet friends after that. And I knew that he was the only actor who could play this character. So once Claire came on board and Glenn came on board, we were able to get everybody else. So it just kind of became its own thing.
Well, what was it about Glenn that made you think that?
Well, I wrote that big monologue, and as soon as I saw him read it the first time, I was like, "Oh, thank God I didn't give that to myself." But Charlie's character, I think, has a lot of, he's a good dude, right? There's nothing we would call toxically masculine about this man. He listens, he is funny, and he's charming, and is not unfeeling in any way that we would sort of associate with somebody who would be closed up after something happens like that. But I needed an actor who would be able to play both really shut down and really charming and really open, and not have you hate him when he did shut down, and somebody who had a lot of warmth and sort of like inner resources, so you would believe both sides of that. And Glenn was the only actor I could think of.
Wow. So tell me, what kind of preparation did you two do to kind of put yourselves in this really delicate, vulnerable situation?
You want to take this one?
It's funny because Claire and I we joke about it regularly. We're both very much cancers. And so as we started talking, as soon as I read the script, there was just something very, there's those times you get a project that comes through and you don't have to think about it. You don't have to like feel like you're doing some sort of surgery or dissection. It just feels very innately in your bones somehow. And so a lot of it was just us sort of texting back and forth for a little while, and then a few phone calls, and then the day before we started production, we got together to have dinner with the three of us, Alyssa and I and Claire, and we talked for, I don't know, forever, but there was so much regular life. I think is the biggest thing is, the art is best when it feels like you're a fly on a wall, witnessing something, and I think a lot of it really had to do with the three of us being just very open. And Claire, you can't ask for a better actor's director in the sense of like somebody who knows how to come in and give a note that's not superficial. They know how to come in and get right to the heart of something. And so that was our conversations were probably 80% just about our lives, our fears and insecurities. Because I think coming into a project like this, you have to really walk right up to the edge of the cliff and realize you're not throwing yourself to your death. You're trusting that your partner is your bungee cord. And I think that was the biggest part of it. I know for me was being able to go to that kind of a place with somebody that I could talk to outside of the project on a human level and trust that that person's gonna be there to keep you from falling and vice versa. And so having that on the set throughout, and I'll beat this drum again. Ladies, please keep making films and writing scripts. There is something very different. There is something so incredibly different and so immersively powerful about women spearheading this because of the fact that men, we have had plenty of opportunities to lead conversations and we always tend to put ourselves in the driver's seat of those conversations where every time I'm on set with women making films, it is about the heart of the story and the story that needs to be told. And to be part of that and to be trusted in that way was very, very incredible. So I'm very blessed to be a part of it in that sense and to have that kind of a trust on set.
Yeah, and Claire, some of you may remember, she had a film here a few years ago called Runner, which is thematically, I think, kind of fits with this one. That was the one about a woman who, while on a morning run, she witnesses a murder in a back alley, and she, how she processes that trauma. In this film, we never see the attack, and so we have to imagine it in our heads. Was there ever a temptation to show more, or?
No, no, I why is that funny?
No, I kind of knew that was going to be the answer, but I thought I'd ask her.
No, I very deliberately wrote it so that you don't see it because I think, especially in a short form, I mean, just from like a mechanical standpoint, if I show you something super graphic in 14 minutes, that's the image that you're going to leave with. You're not going to leave with like Glenn's beautiful acting or like Jason Shu's beautiful cinematography. You're going to leave with, somebody getting brained with a 2x4. But I also think that to allow the violence of the story to happen off screen, it makes the discomfort of moving on even greater. And that's a narrative challenge I think that we don't see a lot in cinema, and that was the thing that Claire and I talked about. We always see the climax. We always see the life-altering event. Mm-hmm. But what was really interesting to me for this story was what happens after that. You throw the empty popcorn bag out and you're done with the movie and you go home, and what happens to those characters now? And that was A, budgetarily easier to do, and B, I think a more interesting version of this kind of story.
Yeah, and I think there might be other filmmakers who, at the very last shot, my eyes are always on your hands. Is he gonna hold her hand? Is he gonna make that touch? And you went to black instead. And without explaining the ending in literal terms, because I wouldn't want you to do that. What does that ending say to you personally? Or
I think that they're still going to be on a journey. We saw them start the journey. Mm-hmm. I think it'd be too easy and frankly insulting to the audience to be like, and they went to one session of therapy and now everything's fine. And also less because life is messy, right? Mm-hmm. And trauma is messy, and this story is not my story, but it is informed by my story. And I think there is a part of you that can't go back. And I deliberately did not want to show the characters going back, because I think the most important thing about what happens to them in the film is how they're going to move forward. And we don't know yet.
Yeah, and I think that shares, it's also an aspect of Cooney's film Runner. It's the same kind of ambiguity to it that's really, really perfect for it.
Thank you.
Tom, the director of My Duduś, This was really fascinating to me. So we see the squirrel as a tiny little baby at the very beginning, and I'm wondering like what made you decide to pick up the camera and start filming, or is that a reshoot or something, or?
So I actually really wanted to study cinematography. I went to school in Poland. So during that entire process, I was living in Poland, and during the summers and winters, I would come back home. I ended up studying photography, but the friends that I made out there, they just encouraged me to just pick up a camera and shoot. But first and foremost, my mom's actually over there, so she's the one who, there she is waving.
She's waving.
So it was actually my mom who just said, just pick up the camera and just start shooting it. And so that's exactly what I ended up doing. Just kind of going back and forth between Poland and Chicago. And that was the beauty of it, is because it was all at home. So I could just pick up the camera at any time and just start shooting. But the problem with that is there's so many things that are constantly going. My mom's just like, pick up the camera, there's something happening. And I had so much footage, and I think I accumulated hours and hours of it, but I chose maybe 45 minutes of my favorites. And I sent it to my producer, Nick, who's actually from Chicago, but unfortunately he's in LA right now. And he just sent it to an editor, and we just kind of created something out of that.
And how long ago was this, and how and where is Duduś today?
So that took about a year to film. And the story was, when I was in Poland, my mom calls me and she said that she was just sitting outside. Usually she calls him and he always comes back. And so this one day he was just sitting on a tree, kind of just looks at my mom, and he wouldn't come to her. And so I think that was like that moment where Duduś was just like, thank you for everything. I'm going away to college. I'm just gonna go and thank you for everything and just move on. And so we haven't seen him since, but we're sure he's doing all right.
Okay. I feel like no matter where we live, we see wild animals out there. We see birds and squirrels and rabbits all the time, and we don't really think about how animals survive out there. And I'm wondering if this project sort of changed the way you look at these common outdoor animals, if it changed the way you kind of see them, or?
When I see one crossing the street, I definitely slow down now. I'm kidding, I always slow down. But I think I just look at squirrels in a completely different way. Just the coexistence of humans and animals. I think it's a very special bond. I think that the squirrel was actually sort of like a substitute for me. So when I was going away to school, Duduś sort of like became me. So it became very symbolic in a way, and yeah.
And I feel like sometimes our festival lands on the weekend of Mother's Day, and I feel like this would have been the perfect Mother's Day movie. My mom and I are celebrating Mother's Day today instead of last week, so that kind of fits. I assume the cat is declawed. I saw that and I was like, wait a minute.
So I knew there was going to be a lot of people kind of like saying something about that, and that was very accidental, the relationship between them. So at night, my mom would put Duduś into a cage, and it would be usually dark in the room. And so one day she puts Duduś in there and then locks the cage, and then she wakes up in the morning and realizes that the cat is in there. So she didn't realize that the cat was already sleeping in there when she put the squirrel in there. So when she opens it up, out comes the cat, just kind of like stretches, and then right after him, like Duduś comes out, stretches, and they like accidentally bonded through that way.
Wow.
Yeah. So by no means do I also suggest trying to make that a relationship. Don't do that.
Are there any questions? We usually have a mic down here, but we can't really have one because we're using all the mics. So, you have a question?
Yeah, I wanted to say, first of all, congratulations to Alyssa and Glenn. Really
Thank you,
beautifully
Michael.
acted film all the way
Thank
through.
you.
My question's for Alyssa. You said this is the first screenplay you've ever written. Could you talk a little bit about what I think you did an exceptional job of writing a role that plays to your strengths as an actress. So can you talk a little bit about how it's different to act in a part that you wrote versus acting in somebody else's script? And also, what do you see as the similarities between the disciplines of acting and writing, if any?
That's a great question. I think to me they're the same thing. In that when you're just acting, the words have to, this is gonna sound so pretentious and I'm so sorry. The words have to sound like they're yours, right? You have to find a way to make those your words as if they are coming from you. So the motor is the same, I think. As for playing to my strengths, I mean, I've been playing weepy moms in commercials since I was 23. And you know, being in Chicago and being a Chicago actor, I am sadly not a comedy person. So that's not really my strength. But I was very interested in this story, and I felt like there were elements of my life that I could sort of plug in that made sense, that coincided with Edie's. On set, I think I was insufferable, so I apologize.
She was not.
Because and I also produced this film too, so I had a lot of hats on, and then when we got to the weekend of production, I took every hat off except actor hat. Did not look at the monitor, I did not want to know what the angle was, I didn't want to know what my face was doing, I didn't want to be giving script notes, I didn't want to think about anyone else's performance except for what I was responding to, because I think I am not great at melding all of those in a way that wouldn't already come out authentically as if I were just an actor. Or I could be bad at multitasking. Thanks, Michael.
Tom, I wanted to ask you, what was your mom's reaction to your film?
She's very emotional, so she cried a lot.
Okay.
She keeps, the funny thing is, even though Duduś is gone, we've created she's Dr. Dolittle basically. There's squirrels coming by all the time. She just feeds them. So right after we filmed that, miraculously, she found two more. But at that time, when we found Duduś, we ended up calling animal control, but because it was COVID, everything was closed. So we had no other option but to take care of him. So now, after we finding the other two, we ended up calling, and they took him in and took great care of him.
Cool. Any other questions? I can't really see. Oh, I see one right back there. Yes. Yes.
Congratulations, Alyssa.
Thanks, Lydia. Hi.
I really appreciated the variety of today. So I was just really curious on your selection process because it was just really cool and fun to go from one to the next, and they were all so different.
Oh, thanks. It's a fun process, actually. I watch about 80 films on my own, and I'm really looking for, I try to play crowd pleasers on Saturday, and Monday I try to play weird esoteric stuff because not as many people come. And that's gonna be totally different this Monday, but that's a long story. Just try to think about you and what audiences respond to, and try to put them in an order that makes sense. I watch these things. I've seen each of these movies at least 10 times each in different order. I get a little obsessive about it, and I lose sleep over it, and that's why I second guess myself all the time in the order. So that's why I made that announcement today. This was the hardest year, I think, getting these movies in the right order that worked. So, I also write about short films for RogerEbert.com, and I always end a Q&A with the directors by asking the simple question of what's next for you. Is there another film production going on, or anything you want to plug, or?
I'm about to wrap. We finish up June a film called Penitentia, and actually the wonderful Rusty Schwimmer is in that with me, but that is hopefully going to have a festival run starting in the fall. but you can find it on Instagram and things, Penitentia.
Cool. Okay.
Well, I'm an actor, so I audition a lot, so you can hire me if you want, and then I can answer this question better next time.
I have a difficult time with procrastination. I've been sitting on a lot of footage from the previous camera shop that I worked at, and I just accumulated tons of stuff. Hopefully gonna dig into that pretty soon. Because I love photography, that's like my first passion. I want to do a photo book from Poland and the United States, just kind of the comparisons between my mother and her sister and the relationship of them being separated. And yeah, that's it.
Very cool. Oh, I see a hand up there. Yes, question.
Hey, Bruce.
Well, yes and no, I think. I don't have a lot of experience as anything but an actor, so this was my first time producing and my first time writing. We are part of a super lovely, generous Chicago film community, and we said, hey, will you give us money to make this film? And a lot of people said yes. I think it was easier because we were able to throw up a link and we were able to assemble some quick materials, and people had an idea of what we were trying to do. But even on a micro budget level, you know, you're talking thousands of dollars. I think it's easier to do with crowdfunding, for sure. But it definitely requires existing connections. As for the audience, I think just having like YouTube channels, and HBO has a short section now too. I think there's a little bit more of a demand for short form entertainment. So I'm hoping that that continues, because it's easier for new filmmakers to make short films.
And I think because of the incredible reach and breadth now of streaming, and I mean every platform at this point, I mean every network has their own streaming platform with Peacock and Paramount Plus, and it's becoming such a massive ordeal that I do believe, at least out in LA and starting to get a little bit more of a feel out there, it seems like you do have investors that are a little bit more imaginative, which almost sounds oxymoronic, but there is a little bit more of an imagination because they see how wide open things are, and that we are still kind of in this big transition right now, and they're trying to figure out which way we're going to go. So I think it is a little bit easier to pitch the idea of distribution as much as the project. And so, and I always like, and I just want to say, like, because I started here in Chicago, this is my creative birthplace. This place groomed me. This place prepared me for LA. Please, please, please keep telling stories here. There is a heart that beats so strongly here in Chicago. And it's not that there aren't incredible artists, incredible emotional storytellers in LA, but a lot of times you can feel beaten down by the parameters that are set. And this place, from the time I came here to this day, is the thing that always overwhelms me. Is it doesn't start with, well, what is this like? Or, well, what's the trend of thing? It's like, this is a story that hits so hard that we have to tell it. Whether it's 5 people that show up or 5,000, it needs to be told. And it's that bravery and it's that incredible artistic fortitude that I think makes Chicago just the absolute birthplace of some of the greatest stories that can be told. So like, don't be afraid of the medium, let the medium find you, and make everybody else afraid of the incredible art that Chicago puts out. So, love you guys.
Tom, you're coming from documentary. Did you have anything to add to this?
I guess I was just fortunate that everything was filmed at home, so there was a 0 budget, but after submitting to film festivals, color correction, you go in the negative, and then you hope and pray that some online outlet will hopefully get a hold of you and purchase it for a couple $100. No, not a lot of money. But so the whole purpose of this is to try and get it out and to get as many people to see it as possible, because I think it's a powerful story.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming. Thank you all for coming. Don't forget to fill out or rip your ballot through the title of your favorite film that you saw here today. Drop it in our ballot box so we can have an audience award for one of these 8 films that you saw today. Thank you so much for coming.